Hello, everyone. Welcome to another expert interview here in the Body Mind Performance Certification. Today, we have an amazing, amazing call ahead of us. We have Dr. Carolyn Dean, the author of The Magnesium Miracle, a book that literally transformed my life as a nutritionist and as a coach because it gave revolutionary information on an incredibly important nutrient in our lives. Carolyn, welcome to our call.
Thank you, Lars. It's great to be here.
Carolyn, I've really had my life changed. I was telling you before we jumped on the call that you've changed my parents' life and thousands of lives that I've shared your book with and shared your knowledge with. I would just love to start with your story. How did it all begin with magnesium, and take us back into that starting place?
Well, even before medical school, I was interested in natural medicine, nutritional medicine, but I didn't even know much about magnesium. I remember in biochemistry, in the slideshows that we were presented, they would show in the biochemistry the reactions from step to step would require vitamins and minerals. And I was already interested in nutrition, so I paid attention. I thought that's fascinating, but that never came up in clinical practice. We were never told, look, if your energy is low, did you realize that ATP requires magnesium in 6 of its 8 steps? We were never told that. It was like, someone's tired, they must be depressed, so they need an antidepressant. So it's quite frustrating. And it really wasn't until many years later when I was doing AIDS and chronic fatigue research in Manhattan that Random House asked me to write a book on magnesium. And that's a big story in itself. And I thought, well, how can I find 300 pages for one mineral? And come to find out that my heart palpitations and my severe leg cramps, Charlie horse leg cramps, were magnesium deficiency. And then I find out when I try to supplement magnesium that I get the laxative effect from magnesium. So that led me from the late 1990s until now into an extensive magnesium investigation. I'm not a bench researcher, I'm a clinical researcher, and I'm a writer. And I've put all the information that I've learned personally and also academically into the zeitgeist of the internet. And I'm just so happy that people take on the information. As you say, your life has been changed. I think that's fabulous. So thank you again for having me do this talk and reach even more people.
It's a wonderful pleasure. I mean, the amount of work that you have done to discover all of these layers of details is truly, truly incredible. And it actually led to me understanding that single nutrients can have such a global change in our physiology. Yeah. What was that like for you when you started to really discover that?
Well, it seemed to fit into my concept of wanting to simplify things. I noticed in nutritional medicine when other doctors started kind of jumping on the alternative bandwagon. See, I started as an alternative. I knew when I went into medical school that they would not break my spirit and I would not come out as a drug prescribing doctor. So I didn't wait for the 5, 10, 15 years of prescribing drugs and killing off a few patients to say, oh my gosh, there must be something better. There must be, a better way of helping people. From day one, I was practicing as a naturopath because after I did my MD, I did my naturopathic training. So I was so blessed to have this information and, as I said, simplify it. So what I saw the other doctors doing as more people got into alternative medicine, if a few vitamins didn't work, they'd give more. They'd give higher doses. They'd start intramuscular injections, IV injections, more and more and more, a real allopathic approach. And they weren't really taking much time to do diet intervention or do relaxation. I had learned acupuncture in my second year elective in medical school, for Pete's sake. So I was able to do energy medicine as well, in the form of acupuncture, relaxation, the BEST bodywork technique. So I was well equipped to use other modalities so that I didn't think I had to force all these supplements down people's throats. So when I started looking so deeply into magnesium, I realized, oh my gosh, the electrical conductivity of the body requires minerals. The EKG that you measure your heart rhythm with, that's an electrical measurement. The EEG in the brain. And it strikes me as just being actually pretty stupid of medicine to not realize when the electrical conductivity of the heart is affected and you get atrial fibrillation and heart palpitations, that there's a problem with your electrolytes. But they never go there. As soon as there's atrial fibrillation, any sort of rhythm disturbance, it's drugs to suppress the symptoms. And that has led people down a rabbit hole of more and more side effects, actually more arrhythmias, because the drugs themselves deplete magnesium and leave a person even more deficient and having even more symptoms. So I do try to simplify it, definitely. And it's served me well. People are just, they're amazed that even if they've had, for atrial fibrillation, the cardiac ablation surgeries, if their problem is a magnesium deficiency problem and they take sufficient amounts of magnesium, well-absorbed magnesium, then they get better. Everybody's amazed, except the doctors. They still poo-poo it.
Well, we're definitely getting into a whole new realm of epigenetics. Can you comment on that as well?
Oh, yes. Well, epigenetics is the environment around the genes that turns the genes on and off. I mean, the genes aren't geniuses. The body is the genius. So actually, when they did the genome project and they thought, oh, we'll discover all the genes that do everything in the body, and if they're not working, we'll just snip them out. Well, come to find out, instead of a couple 100,000 genes that they could snip in and out, there's only about 23,000 genes in the whole body. So that means they're doing all kinds of different functions. They're being turned on and off by vitamins and minerals and environmental chemicals and toxins. So everything we've been talking about in natural medicine plays out even around genetics. And what did they do? They kind of dropped the whole gene project. Gene therapy never worked. But what we see now, to try to recoup some of the money they spent on all this genetic research, you have all these private labs doing genetic testing where they will present a person with, the top 100 gene abnormalities that they have and have no solution for them. So it's made people even more crazy about their health, because now they're being told, oh, you have these gene SNP defects, and no, we don't have anything for you to do about them. And I think it's devastating, because people are already suffering from the diet fanaticism. They think they have to do a certain diet or they won't be better. They're suffering from the over prescription of supplements. I once had a client who's on 300 to 500 pills a day of supplements that her nutritionist advised her to have. Every time she go in for an appointment, she had a whole new list of symptoms, and the nutritionist would mash them up with the latest supplements. I mean, it's really Yes, we're really in a complex state now where, just as you say and I say, Lars, we have to simplify. We have to have some basic ground rules about what's really going on with the body. And my ground rules are mineral deficiencies because the soil is so depleted, and yeast overgrowth, intestinal yeast overgrowth caused by the antibiotic overuse and overuse of sugar and carbs, where the intestinal flora goes out of balance. Now, yes, medicine is getting involved with the microbiome and talking about the intestinal flora and trying to balance it. But what do? It's all about bacteria. They totally ignore yeast. And, their big, technology, their big treatment is rectal implants of somebody else's rectal bacteria. I mean, they just go crazy. Let's eat some sauerkraut, for Pete's sakes. Let's take some plain kefir. But it is important for folks like you to bring it back to the simple basics. And one other thing that comes to mind is there are a lot of young people who are looking at diet. They're going into their raw diet and they're, back to vegan, all this green juicing. But the problem there is the soil is depleted. And I have had enough of these presumably extremely healthy people, or they think they should be with all the good food they're eating, come to me with heart palpitations, legs cramps, chronic symptoms, chronic aches and pains. That's alleviated within days with proper magnesium supplementation. They are blown away. And so we keep coming back to magnesium, magnesium, magnesium.
Well, that's where I kept on coming back. It was really quite something. Like the two major life-changing moments for me was when I discovered your book and Dr. Bruce Lipton's work. Those were times where literally my nutrition career was flipped upside down and everything became easy. Now it was literally the process of giving the power back to the client and saying, you're the one in control. It's your thoughts and emotions. It's your actions. And it's coming down, like you were saying, to some simple ground rules. There are some simple things. If you do them every day, and magnesium has been one of those. So now we're going to jump into your amazing presentation on magnesium, which I'm truly excited about. So let's get started with that.
I'd like to talk about magnesium, the many roles it has in our health. There is so much that I can say about magnesium because I've been researching it since the late 1990s when I was asked by Random House to write a book on magnesium. It's the Magnesium Miracle. This is the 2014 edition. I've completed the 2017 edition, so that will be out in the spring of 2017. Every few years, there's 30% more information about magnesium, so I'm very happy that I'm able to continue to increase and improve the education I can provide about magnesium. What I realized when I was doing research for the book was I have severe magnesium deficiency. I lose magnesium very easily, so I need to replace it every day. If I don't, I get heart palpitations and severe Charlie horse leg cramps, the ones at night when you lie down, you stretch your legs and your calf muscle just goes into hard rock and you have to fling yourself on the floor and try to straighten out your leg to get your muscles to release. A lot of people get these symptoms. They end up on drugs for them, but for the most part, the treatment is magnesium. The second thing I found out about myself, which spurred my research, is that when I tried to supplement with oral magnesium, I would get the laxative effect. Now, that's a fail-safe of magnesium where you can never take too much. You can never really get an overload of magnesium when you take it by mouth. You may hear that that can happen, but that does happen in hospital settings where doctors give IV magnesium and cause problems. But the laxative effect prevents that. And that happens because in evolution, humans grew up around oceans. Ocean water has 3 times the magnesium as it does calcium. So in order to get enough calcium for our bones and not get too much magnesium from their seafood, seaweed diet, the body developed the fail-safe laxative effect for magnesium, and it developed vitamin D that helps grab calcium and hold it in the body. So what have we done in the past few decades? We've overloaded people, mostly women, with calcium supplements for their bones. We've overloaded people now with high doses of vitamin D, and we've stopped recommending magnesium, and we've stopped eating enough magnesium in our diet because the soil is depleted. Thus sets the stage for all the symptoms of magnesium deficiency that I'm going to talk about. The functions of magnesium: it's not just a laxative. That's what doctors think. They know about the bowel preparation for colonoscopies is a lot of magnesium citrate. They never looked at their biochemistry in medical school to see that magnesium is required for 700 to 800 enzyme systems in the body. It catalyzes most chemical reactions in the body. It synthesizes protein. Protein has magnesium receptor sites that have just been elucidated in scientific literature. Magnesium helps transmit nerve signals. It relaxes muscles, whereas calcium contracts muscles. So think about the heart is one huge muscle. You have too much calcium, those muscles go into contraction if they don't have enough magnesium to relax the muscles. After that heart contraction, you want to relax. You don't want a sustained contraction of your heart. Sustained contraction of the heart is angina or heart attack. It's very serious. And number 6 on the slide here is magnesium produces and transports energy as ATP. What's ATP? Adenosine triphosphate. It's considered by biologists to be the energy currency of life. It stores the energy we need for every activity in the body. It's present in every cell, and all the physiological mechanisms that require energy for operation obtain it directly from stored ATP. Now, most of the work of the Krebs cycle to make ATP is in the mitochondria. And we hear a lot about mitochondrial dysfunction. Oh, what are we going to do about it? And how can we help the mitochondria? And here's, a dozen different nutrients that may help. Well, magnesium is what will help the mitochondrial Krebs cycle ATP activity. That's your basic nutrient of the mitochondria. The next aspect of this slide is a number that you can't even grasp. It's estimated that 2 to the 10 to the 26 molecules provide greater than 160 kilograms of ATP daily. I mean, I can't even conceive of it, but that's what you find in some of the physiologic journals. And the most important part of this Krebs cycle is 6 of the 8 steps require magnesium. And here's the slide that shows that. You can find this anywhere. The different aspects of going from one stage to the other in this Krebs cycle do not proceed without sufficient magnesium. Now, for folks who want to work with nutrition, who want to be consulting with their clients about nutrition, it might help for them to know where their magnesium deficiency is coming from. If they're drinking sodas, the phosphate in sodas bind magnesium. The sugar in so much of the junk food that people eat requires magnesium to metabolize it. And 28 molecules for sucrose, table sugar, but 56 molecules for a molecule of fructose. And this becomes very important. Fructose is fruit sugar, and yes, it does mean that people who overdo their fruit intake can be at risk for magnesium deficiency. But one of the main ways of getting too much fructose is in the corn-based sugar sweeteners, what it's called high fructose corn syrups, that are used in a lot of the sodas, and they allow companies to say, oh, this is fruit sugar sweetened soda, so therefore it's healthy. But what happens, it drains magnesium, and also it overworks the liver. You really need to look at the liver metabolism, how it has to break down fructose and how it takes much more energy to do so, and how high fructose intake is leading to fatty liver. It's incredibly important. Number 3, stress burns off magnesium. Medical procedures and surgeries, burns themselves, being in a fire, burning yourself, obviously drains a lot of nutrients, including magnesium. Drinking a lot of tea, coffee, caffeinated drinks becomes like a diuretic, and the diuresing will pull out your magnesium, pulls out potassium and sodium as well. Those a lot of people understand, but they don't regard magnesium. And it's mainly magnesium that's doing these 700, 800 functions in the body. As a comparison, the mineral that's the next in line for being so important for its number of metabolic functions is zinc, and it oversees about 180 different enzyme functions in the body. So magnesium wins out with its 700 or 800 functions. Number 6, are you sweating a lot at your job or at the gym? I can't tell you how many people have approached me who were athletes when they were younger, and they said, they just would sweat all day, and over time they would sort of wind down and get more fatigued, etc. Didn't know why. And a lot of them developed anxiety and heart palpitations and leg cramps, and they didn't know why. Now, especially if it's anxiety, I mean, I've talked to these, 6'5" athletes, 300 pounds, who, melt into a panic attack, anxiety situation, and they don't know where it's coming from, and they have to get out of their sport. They have to leave their sport because they just can't cope. And here it is, magnesium deficiency. Number 7, do you drink more than 7 alcoholic beverages per week? Yes. Magnesium is drained with alcohol as a diuretic, and also to metabolize the alcohol, you require more magnesium. Calcium supplements, this is a huge cause of magnesium deficiency. This balance between magnesium and calcium is very important. I'll address it later on. But if you take too much calcium and you're not taking equal amounts of magnesium, then you'll create a relative magnesium deficiency. Your nerves and muscles will have too much calcium and have that sustained activity, which causes muscle spasms and nerve firing. Excess nerve firing can result in the nerves actually kind of exciting themselves to death, and they just quit. That's where you start getting nerve symptoms, numbness, tingling, all kinds of strange nerve symptoms that really scare people, because when you go to doctors with numbness, tingling, irritation, spasms, they start looking at really serious nerve conditions like multiple sclerosis before they ever even look at magnesium deficiency. With anxiety, hyperactivity, difficulty getting to sleep or staying asleep, that's all magnesium deficiency. We have a saying in the magnesium world that if you're taking magnesium for your sleep and you're still not sleeping well, you have to take more magnesium. It's as simple as that. And it really helps people stay away from addictive sleeping medications. Again, about the muscle spasms, if you have spasms, cramping, fibromyalgia, facial tics, eye twitches, involuntary eyelid movements, then that's all magnesium deficiency. As you age, you become more mineral deficient and magnesium deficient. About the mineral deficiency and dehydration in aging, a lot of people as they get older, they say, I don't want to drink so much water because I'll just run to the bathroom. And what's happening there is the lack of water intake and the lack of mineral intake will actually cause edema. When your cells don't have sufficient minerals that will pull water into the cells to make it work properly. You need fluid in your cells to make the minerals work and all the rest of it. And that water will be metabolized and it's no longer water. It doesn't run off into your bladder. So if the cells don't have the minerals and don't have the water, they're dehydrated, they shrink, they're not doing their function, and your body becomes weak and tired because you're not performing. And then the water that you're drinking just kind of goes into your tissues. It goes through to your bladder, so you're urinating all the time, you're up at night several times, and you have ankle edema. You go to the doctor, you have ankle edema, you feel fatigued, your blood pressure may be up because you're magnesium deficient, and the doctor will put you on diuretics. The doctors try and squeeze out even more water because they see your ankles are swollen. What you need to do is drink enough water and put sea salt in your water. Enough water to me is you take your weight in pounds. So if you're 200 pounds, then take half of that weight, take 100, and make that the ounces of water you drink a day. It sounds like a lot, but when you add a quarter teaspoon of sea salt or Himalayan salt to each quart of water you drink or liter of water, then you'll start replacing the minerals your body needs. Because when you look at the minerals in water these days, they've all been filtered out. If you're drinking bottled water, most of that water is just distilled water and it has no minerals. If you filter your own water, the minerals are gone because you're trying to get rid of the chemicals. So the only way to get the minerals back in your drinking water is to put sea salt in, apply the mineral solution. And of course, I want people to take magnesium and multiple minerals as well. But you start with the sea salted water. And I cannot tell you how many people will come back to me and say, wow, I can put my shoes on now. I don't get up at night to go to the bathroom. I can't believe that drinking more water is actually making me go to the bathroom less. Number 12 here is really important. Are you exposed to fluoride through water, dental products, or drugs? What happens with fluoride is that it binds magnesium, making it unavailable and ineffective. It binds magnesium. Now, fluoride, doctors may say, or researchers, that, well, the fluoride in dental products or in drugs, it's bound up and It's not going to be just floating around in the body and available to the magnesium. But you tell that to the trillions of bacteria in your intestines whose job is to break down these molecules and try to render them harmless. Well, they release fluoride or fluorine into the body, and it binds with magnesium. The magnesium fluoride compound is insoluble and brittle. It replaces magnesium in bone and cartilage, making bone prone to fracture and cartilage prone to rupture. And I'll get to that rupture word in a minute when I go over some of the drugs that have fluoride molecules attached. Fluoride is everywhere. It's in our drinking water. So any product that you eat, even in restaurants, when you eat food that's cooked in fluoride water, you're going to be exposed to fluoride. It's in just about every toothpaste. I've done this. I've gone into drugstores and looked at all the toothpaste. They all have fluoride. Even Tom's toothpaste, they have a fluoride addition to their toothpaste, presumably to keep up with the Joneses. And the fluoride medications, I think that's the worst because nobody talks about it. 20% of all drugs have fluoride molecules added, but fluoride drugs are the majority of commonly used drugs. Why is that so? It's because fluoride increases the drug's ability to dissolve in fats and cross fatty cell membranes, which means they access the brain, they have greater access to the cells, so they become more powerful. 70% of Americans are taking prescription medication, so 70% of Americans may be taking one or more of these fluoride drugs. The cardiovascular side effects of drugs, I think they're the most common, the cardiovascular side effects, and I say that's because the drugs are depleting magnesium, whether or not they have fluoride, and since magnesium is required to make the heart function properly, then if you don't have magnesium, your heart's going to suffer and you have heart side effects. And to me, it just makes common sense. And I don't understand why doctors haven't clued into the fact that they're creating magnesium deficiency, causing magnesium deficiency side effects with their drugs. And then these magnesium deficiency symptoms are often treated with more fluoridated drugs. Drugs cause magnesium to be dumped into the blood, which means much of the beneficial effect of drugs are due to magnesium. Now, this is an important point. I got this information from Dr. Mildred Zelig, who also wrote a book on magnesium. And when she first got out of medical school, she worked for drug companies, and her job was to find out what happens to vitamins and minerals when a person takes drugs. And she found that in the initial stages of taking a drug, that the magnesium levels increased. And she realized, oh my gosh, the magnesium is being thrown out to try to get rid of these drugs. But in doing so, the magnesium levels in the bloodstream are elevated, make the person feel better, which may be why drugs look like they work for the first 6 or 8 weeks of usually the time frame of the clinical trial that is used. After that, the drug side effects kick in, the magnesium deficiency kicks in, and the drugs, it's like there's so many side effects that people start being wary of them. I mean, that's kind of my theory about why drugs seem to work at first and then they seem to develop all these side effects. It's because of magnesium being pushed out. It helps the body for a time, and then you become depleted, and then all the drug side effects become evident. Now, there are a lot of slides here. I'm just going to jump through them. I was just amazed when I realized that Cipro, which has a black box warning about tendon rupture, has fluoride molecules involved. So is that the reason why the side effects include muscle pain, tendon rupture, and atrial fibrillation? Because it's binding magnesium. And those are only 3 of the 126 side effects. Prozac has 3 fluoride molecules with all the side effects related to magnesium deficiency. Paxil, another SSRI antidepressant, has 1 fluoride molecule with magnesium deficiency side effects. Lipitor, the statin drug, also has fluoride, and what happens when many people take Lipitor is muscle cramps and stiffness and swelling, for which they're treated with another fluoride drug, anti-inflammatory. Flecainide. Now, this is my worst example of a fluoride drug. It has 6 fluoride molecules. It's an anti-arrhythmia drug. And if I'm saying a percentage, I don't even know what percentage of people with heart arrhythmias are caused by magnesium deficiency. You're giving these people a fluoride drug that binds up their magnesium and giving them more symptoms, where with the side effects, as you can see here, fast irregular pounding or racing heartbeat, shortness of breath, and tightness in the chest. If the smooth muscles of the bronchial tubes are magnesium deficient, they'll go into spasm, which is a sign of asthma. And then the nerve symptoms of flecainide with the burning, crawling, itching, numbness, prickling, pins and needles, tingling feelings, and chest pain. I mean, I'm just copying this from the internet on the drug side effects. Desflurane. It's an inhaled anesthetic. I've had so many people over the years say to me, I haven't been well since surgery. What if the anesthetic is depleting their magnesium and they wake up with all the cardiovascular side effects and then just never get better because they don't replace their magnesium? Prevacid, here we have what are they called? The PPI, protein pump inhibitor drugs. They have a black box warning about creating magnesium deficiency, and it's likely due to the fluoride molecules involved, causing muscle spasms, cramps, fibromyalgia, back pain. Diflucan, I'm big on treating yeast, and a lot of doctors think diflucan is the safe antifungal for yeast overgrowth, but it too causes symptoms that relate to magnesium deficiency. Celebrex, what you'll be treated with if you have statin-induced muscle and joint pain, has 3 fluoride molecules and causes an increased risk of heart attack. That was shown many years ago, but Celebrex is back on the market. Now, these nasal sprays, right into your brain, you're getting a fluoride drug that causes side effects of muscle weakness and wasting, high blood pressure, and bone fracture. Another asthma inhaler, Advair, has 3 fluoride molecules. What is the solution? Take more magnesium. And as you're taking magnesium, which may be treating your magnesium deficient symptoms for which you're taking the drugs, then you can be able to wean off your meds. You really have to work with your doctor on this. Or I at least have to say you have to work with your doctor. But as you're feeling better, as your blood pressure improves, you want to wean off your medications. As your arrhythmia improves, you want to wean off your medication. So this is where you're taking more responsibility for your own health. I jumped over a few slides earlier. Let me just go back there to go over the list of all the magnesium deficient conditions. We did the magnesium deficiency quiz. And again, I don't have to read up all these names. I have dozens and dozens of conditions here. But just to say that acid reflux, I mean, that can occur when your stomach is in spasm. Your stomach is a big muscle, and if it is magnesium deficient, it can cause acid reflux. Anxiety and panic attacks, that's a magnesium deficiency that causes the adrenal glands to be trigger happy. When the adrenals don't have enough magnesium, then when you get a shock or some sort of irritation, then your adrenaline can pump out erratically and make you feel like your heart's racing, and maybe make you sweat or just make you feel so bad for no reason. And then you think you're having a panic attack. So you go to your doctor with that sort of history, and your doctor will say, oh, you need an anti-anxiety medication, whereas it's basically magnesium deficiency. Even something like blood clots is important to look at, because the magnesium, it's not a blood thinner, but what magnesium does is it keeps calcium under control, so that the calcium part of creating blood clots is not overemphasized. So it's just a natural balance of the genius body to keep the blood in a fluid condition. And what I'm thinking of right now is if you're dehydrated, your blood will be thicker. So it's very important to hydrate your body with the water guidelines that I talked about, and also the sea salt in the water. Chocolate craving is important because there's a lot of magnesium in chocolate. So if you crave chocolate, you're craving magnesium. A lot of people tell me when they become saturated with magnesium, they don't crave chocolate anymore. Even bladder spasms, where people think they're having bladder infections, it can be a buildup of calcium around the walls of the urethra, and that will dissolve with magnesium. Depression, diabetes actually, that's important. In the medical texts, one of the signs of diabetes is low magnesium, but doctors don't even measure for magnesium to know that that's a possibility. Headaches and migraines. Migraines, the most important treatment for migraine headaches is magnesium. Hypertension, when the blood vessels, when the smooth muscles of the blood vessels go into spasm and clamp down on the blood in the vessels, then that's hypertension. If you take magnesium, that relaxes and you don't have hypertension. IBS, the cramping and irritation in the bowels can be relieved with magnesium, but not if you take a form that causes a laxative effect. Kidney stones, very important to take magnesium for the treatment of kidney stones. Musculoskeletal conditions, all of them respond to proper magnesium intake. Same with all the nerve problems. OBGYN, the PMS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, painful periods, all these respond to magnesium because they are, for the most part, magnesium deficient conditions. What I've done in my Magnesium Miracle book and online in my blogs talk about the 100 factors that help you realize if you have magnesium deficiency. And I do that because the blood testing for magnesium is very inaccurate, and I'll get to that in a moment. Again, this is a huge list. You have it in front of you with the slide, so I won't go over it in detail. All the things that drain magnesium and make us realize why we have magnesium deficiency. Now, how much magnesium does a person require? The RDA of 300 to 400 milligrams is set too low. And the RDA is not meant to be a therapeutic level. It's just meant to keep people from developing severe deficiency symptoms. Even the vitamin C that's in the RDA is so low, it's just enough to prevent you from getting scurvy. And I say most people need twice that amount, about 700 milligrams a day. 100 years ago, we were getting 500 milligrams of magnesium in our diet, and now we're lucky to get 200. And this has been shown by U.S. Department of Agriculture studies and information. And that's why I say everybody should be taking magnesium supplemental form. The blood testing for magnesium that makes doctors think that magnesium deficiency is not a common problem. It's because they only use a serum magnesium blood test. It's useless, actually, because only 1% of the total body magnesium is in the bloodstream. And that, you put your dipstick in the blood, and it's the wrong way to measure. The best measurement is an ionized magnesium blood test. In all the years I've been looking into magnesium, it's remained a research tool. It's only available in hospitals, and I don't know how much it's used even there, because I've never come across anyone who's been able to find an ionized magnesium test. The next best test is the RBC magnesium. Now, what's interesting about the red blood cells is they do not have mitochondria. So they really don't have the amount of magnesium as ordinary tissue cells. But it's still a way to measure magnesium and other minerals. So I don't think there's ever been given any attention to the fact that it doesn't have the mitochondria, so it's not like a tissue cell. They take a blood sample and they spin down the serum away from the red blood cells, and then they measure the magnesium. And it gives you something to go by. I tell people who are worried about taking magnesium because they're on all these drugs and they're afraid to upset their drug protocol or afraid to upset their doctors, I say, well, get a blood test before you start taking your magnesium, and then every 3 to 6 months, see if your levels are rising. Now, a caveat there is that in the first 3 to 6 months, your red blood cell magnesium actually may drop a bit, because all of a sudden you're taking magnesium and you're revving up the 700, 800 enzyme systems, and they're just grabbing this stuff and running with it. So it's not going to hang out in your bloodstream. It is going to be in your tissue cells. It's not even going to be in your red blood cells. Now, the other thing about the red blood cell magnesium test, the other caveat is that the optimal levels are around 6 milligrams per deciliter, even though the range is 4.2 to 6.8. And that's because the ranges in labs are based on the population that goes into the lab to get testing. So that they just create a range based on what's out there. What's out there is 80% magnesium deficient. So who wants to be in a range of sick people? You want to be in the 80th percentile, which I say is around 6.0 to 6.5 milligrams per deciliter. And the range I put here, 4.2 to 6.8, in the past year, I've noticed that some labs, their range has dropped even lower, 3.8 to 6.4. The 3.8 means that they're assuming that since these people are walking around and still alive, that this is the normal range. But when it gets lower and lower like that, then we know the population is getting sicker and sicker. Sources of magnesium. I tell people who say, oh, I'm on all these drugs, I'm afraid to take magnesium. Well, take an Epsom salt bath, for Pete's sakes. It's magnesium sulfate, it's got centuries of use. The midwives used it and all their pregnant women. So 2 cups in a nice moderately hot bath, or a cup in a foot bath, and you'll see the benefits right away. I've seen this myself. I was on a consult once with a 40-year-old teacher. He had anxiety attacks, and on his first consult he said, "Oh, I don't think I can talk. I'm having a panic attack." And I said, "Do you have Epsom salts in your bathroom?" He said, "Yes." I said, pour water in your tub and put in the Epsom salts and just swing your feet in the water. And within minutes, his anxiety, it went away. I mean, maybe it was me talking to him as well, but I'm sure it was the Epsom salts for the most part. There's transdermal magnesium that you can use, and I used to work with that a lot before I found a non-laxative magnesium, because sometimes that was the only way people could avoid the laxative effect. There's magnesium oxide, which is only 4% absorbed. I'm not working with that because it causes too much diarrhea. Once you start having diarrhea when you're taking magnesium, you're going to be losing more magnesium. So you just should not put up with that. The citrate powders put in liquid, they're good. You can sip them through the day, but I can't take them for the laxative effect. The chelates, glycinate and taurate, they can help the absorption a certain percent, maybe up to 20%. What I did, as I mentioned earlier, because of my extreme requirement for magnesium, I eventually, I tried to encourage mineral companies to make a non-laxative magnesium, but they said it's too expensive, requires too much education. But personally, I needed it. So I finally worked with a chemist and a manufacturer to create a picometer stabilized ionic magnesium that's 100% absorbed at the cellular level and does not cause the laxative effect. So what I've been able to do with this is finally prove the effectiveness of therapeutic levels of magnesium, where you're not thrown off by the laxative effect, where you can give magnesium to the point of saturation. What I experienced when I took my own product is, after about 18 months of 2, 3, and even 4 teaspoons of Remag, which is 4 teaspoons is 1,200 milligrams. I needed 18 months to become saturated. And all of a sudden, I started to have the laxative effect. And now I only need 2 teaspoons, which is 600 milligrams, which I think is the RDA of magnesium. So the body, when it does get enough magnesium, when it becomes saturated, when everything is working fine, it does not need more and more and more magnesium. It needs just the amount that's required for daily use. So Remag, I'm having people who've been forced to do intravenous magnesium because they have such a laxative effect with magnesium and they have a great need for magnesium. I've been able to offer them the Remag liquid form. They sip it through the day. They're taking 3 and 4 teaspoons a day, and they no longer have to live with a permanent port in their arm or their neck to get IV magnesium 3 and 4 times a week. The cell mineral ion channels are 400, 500 picometers in diameter. This is the same size as plant openings to allow minerals into the plant rootlets. So I've learned this around the time that I was developing the picometer sized Remag magnesium, that what we're doing with the picometer magnesium is mimicking what the plants do. Unfortunately, in order to get plant-based magnesium, I would have to take like 20, 30 pills a day in order to make up my requirements. And when I took that much plant-based magnesium, I got the laxative effect. So it was not being fully absorbed. The minerals in the body need to be balanced. What I realized when I started using high doses of magnesium is I had to be careful about the other minerals. So I use sea salted water in my drinking water and recommend that. And then I had the chemist put together a formula that I created of multiple minerals. And as I said at the outset, the electrolytes in the body conduct electricity and are absolute requirement. These minerals dissolve in body fluids, and if they're small enough size, they enter cells, draw water into the cells for hydration of the cells. So the edema and dehydration that I did talk about earlier are created because of fluid dehydration and mineral deficiency. So that all led to me creating the Remite product. There are 12 picometer-sized minerals in the Remite. And what was fascinating about Remite is 9 of those minerals are necessary for the production of thyroid hormone. And one of the huge problems in the health of the population right now is thyroid deficiency. And some people say, okay, yes, wait until the thyroid gets totally depleted and we'll just replace it. Allopathic doctors replace the thyroid hormones with synthetic hormones. And the alternative doctors say, no, that's not good enough. We have to replace with armor thyroid or natural desiccated type thyroids. And I say, no. Let's go back even further to what are the building blocks of thyroid hormone. Turns out there are 9 minerals. There's also the amino acid tyrosine. And these minerals, if you take Remite, for example, which in the first 2 months of my taking Remite, when I was testing it on myself, I found that the Armour Thyroid I'd been taking for years, 60 milligrams of Armour Thyroid, I no longer needed it. My pulse was a little elevated. I was a little more hyperactive than I am. I felt a little sped up. I didn't even do blood testing. I just knew, oh my gosh, my thyroid is awake already. And so I just, I stopped my Armour Thyroid cold turkey. I don't recommend that. I tell people to wean off, but I stopped it and I survived, and my hands and feet are still warm. I have no symptoms of low thyroid. So minerals, again, in something as intricate as the thyroid, the minerals come forth. With the adrenal glands, the magnesium is the most important. Then there's zinc. You also need your vitamin C and your B vitamins to support the adrenal glands. The Remite formula, basically, it has the 12 minerals. You can look at this slide at your leisure. The copper is important. And what you may have heard, a lot of people are talking about copper excess. A lot of people have too much copper. It's in all our plumbing. It's everywhere in our environment. But we still need copper. So what I did in the Remite formula is I made sure I had very low amount of copper compared to zinc, so that people could have a small amount of bioavailable copper, because you still need copper for body functions. This bioavailable copper will get into the cells and perform its functions. The excess copper, what it's doing, it's blocking copper receptors and causing side effects. And what happens, though, when you take enough magnesium, when you have your zinc, which is also in Remite, your body will release this excess copper and detoxify it. So the Remite formula is very important. The selenium here on this slide is very important. I have iodine in the formula. Iodine is necessary for the thyroid. Unfortunately, what a lot of practitioners are doing now is recommending high dose iodine to really push the thyroid to work harder. That's not the point. What that will do is create a downstream product that becomes excessive and causes problems if you don't have enough selenium to metabolize that downstream product. So you just use the RDA of iodine in this picometer form. It creates the next chemical in the downstream process. That's picked up with selenium, and then it goes on to the next downstream products, so that at the end of using these 9 minerals, you have functioning thyroid hormone. My resources page, I don't know how long I've taken, but I'm winding down now. My resources are at rnareset.com, and most of my content is at drcarolyndean.com. I remain open to questions. Lars, just let me know if you have any, but hopefully this has been helpful for you and your clients and consumers.
Carolyn, thank you for such a magnificent presentation. It is truly an eye-opener. You know, after all these years reading your book multiple times, it is required reading within our performance certification here, and I believe it's required reading in everybody's life. We will include all the information with this video so folks can visit you, they can open your products, and enjoy the magnificent boost in health, because I certainly have, and many thousands of clients. So one of the things that I've discovered over all of these years is the incredible insulin balancing effects of magnesium. And once we balance insulin, all of the many functions that start to happen normally. Can we talk about that a little bit?
Yes, that's a very good point. I briefly mentioned how one of the signs of diabetes is magnesium deficiency, but I didn't go into how magnesium helps the performance of the pancreas in creating insulin. It helps the introduction of insulin into the cells. It somehow binds with insulin and pulls it into cells. It also helps metabolize protein, carbohydrates, and fats. It helps adjust our cortisol levels so that cortisol doesn't jump into our midsection and increase our belly fat as a response to stress. So magnesium does so much for balancing blood sugar, but it's I think it's very difficult for people to kind of accept that one mineral does so much. They just have to experience it. You know, their mind may not be able to accept it, but their body will accept it. And I just keep saying to people, I'm just going to keep on, dramatically talking about magnesium, and until you try it, you won't know. You cannot intellectualize something like this when, especially in the medical and nutritional field, where you can't imagine that one thing can do so much. You see, in medicine, if a patient comes in and says, I have these 20 symptoms, what are you going to do about it? The doctor will say, well, I'll do 2 at a time, and you can come back for the rest. Whereas those 20 symptoms could give me the indication, oh, you're magnesium deficient, take magnesium. I don't even do consultations anymore, Lars, because I found very quickly that I was just telling people, well, take all my products. And at the end of a consult, I wouldn't even charge them. I felt too embarrassed. I'm just going to tell them to use the $200 to buy my products, is what I said. And finally, I just said, look, I'm very busy, running the company and everything now, helping with customer support. So just take the products. I have a 2-hour radio show. People come on the show and they can ask me questions directly. And people are they're just getting better. I've been at this for about 40 years. Studying nutrition. I started my medical practice in 1979. I've never had the results that I'm having now with people just taking, it's basically 5 simple completement formulas. I don't even call them supplements, because what they do is just complete what the body set out to achieve, when we were first made, with our first blueprint. We have the perfect blueprint for our bodies, and if we can only give it the right building blocks, do a little simple detoxing. I have a formula called Realign that has the methylated Bs, methionine as a precursor to glutathione, and taurine, the sulfur-based amino acid for the help in sulfation, detoxification. It's just simple things that have come together after, being at this whole process. Is it 40 years? Yeah, 40 years.
Well, one of the things that actually I found is I'm huge into data and watching what happens with clients' results. And one of the major outcomes that you did touch on is that we may not need as much carbohydrate and protein and fats, because all of the scientific studies and all of the observations that are out there are in observation for people who are magnesium and mineral deficient. I love your take on that.
Yeah, that is so important. We're so mineral and nutrient deficient. We feel starved all the time. We eat more and more food to try to get those nutrients. If they're not in the soil, we're not going to get them. If we take all these supplements that are only 20% absorbed, we're not going to get them. What I found with the Remag and Remite and even the sea salt, they're so well absorbed that then the body works more efficiently. It can process the food more efficiently. But I've added to that recently, actually, Lars. I don't know if you've seen my new protein powder meal replacement. It's called Restructure. And in it, I have my Rna Drops. Rna Drops is something really quite fantastic. It's just made from barley sprouts. It's a barley extract, but it's got some really special formulation involved. It's on the internet. I did a patent pending on it years ago, but it's very hard to define, but we've had miraculous results with it. So we've put some of this Rna Drops in powder form in their Restructure. We've increased the lysine. We've really worked on our amino acids. We've got something that at 11 grams of protein, it's coming across as many, even dozens of grams more protein, because it's fully absorbed. The body now, in the state where our customers are taking their Remag, their Remite, most of them are taking Rna Drops as well. Just as you said, when you get full absorption of the food you're taking, we have people saying, I just need to eat 1 meal a day and maybe 1 or 2 doses of your Restructure, and I feel better than I ever had. My muscles are filling out. Yes, it's the very basics of giving the body the building blocks, and it will absorb, it will metabolize, it will just do all the things it's supposed to do. We're even at the state with our Rna Drops. We say we don't care about radiation or chemicals or mercury or heavy metals. You know, an efficient body is going to take care of all that, and it will. And it takes away the fear of diet and the fear of the environment. I've been at this, as I said, for decades, and it began with chronic fatigue back in the early 80s, chronic fatigue and AIDS, and people having allergies and people avoiding foods and people having multiple chemical sensitivities. And none of that has gone away. It's just been added to, where now we have everybody with their hormone imbalances, their adrenal exhaustion, their thyroid is punked out. I'm calling it total body meltdown. And the more people restrict their diets and the more supplements they take, they're just not having any benefit, except my complement formulas. I'm just amazed myself. People who've been sick for decades, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, multiple chemical sensitivities, they may start with a couple of drops of Remag in a liter of sea salted water. I mean, some of them can't even start with the sea salt. They have to take a pinch of sea salt. I say, just stick with it. You've got nowhere else to go. Nothing else is worth. Just be patient. And these folks, just starting with a couple of drops, now they're taking their, 1 or 2 teaspoons, and they're finally getting their health back. And it's just because I've been able to go back to the basics.
I truly, truly love that. Now, we have the Body Mind Performance coaches listening in, taking notes, but we also have this open up to our public audience and to all the coaches out there. What's your message to personal trainers, nutritionists, doctors, and health field folks out there?
I think my basic message is allow your clients to be responsible for their own health. Don't say, I'm going to help you. I'm your reason for success. You don't want to take that on. Why people are coming to coaches now is because they've been listening to doctors so much. They've been taking prescriptions. Their head is filled with other people's thoughts. Don't get into that bind. Just, you can say, this is what I do personally, this is what I recommend, but you have to do the work. I can't eat your food for you. I can't exercise for you. I can't do any of that for you. I can just show by example and give you the right information and building blocks. But if you say to someone, I'm going to take care of you, you put them in a lesser position. You put yourself on a pedestal, and then what will happen if your formulas, your approach, your protocol doesn't work for them? They'll blame you. They have to be in a responsible position where we don't want them to blame themselves, but they praise themselves because they did it. Mm-hmm. They don't say, oh, you saved my life. And, that's why even when you say, Lars, oh, you saved my life with your book, it's like, well, no, you had to read the book, you had to take the magnesium, you took responsibility. Yes. So yes, let people be responsible for their own health.
So beautifully said. I really enjoy the voice with which you teach, because it's the voice of really getting the power back, which is the whole epigenetic approach. It's the whole truly new wave of healthcare that's now emerging. So Carolyn, we've reached the end of our call. It's been amazing. We've actually gone over our time, and it's because you're so generous with your time and with the knowledge and wisdom that you have. Thank you. Do you have any closing thoughts for us?
I just want to thank you. You have a wonderful personality, a wonderful aspect about you, and I can see where you will attract a lot of people to, just to do the basic, heartfelt, soul-felt teaching and sharing that you're doing. And mahalo to you. Thank you very much.